This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
The young shining cuckoo is fed by its foster parents on insects and spiders. But the korimako, or bellbird, has a much more interesting diet of nectar. It's been something of a radio personality and has sung on shortwave radio to Australia and the Pacific nations for 30 years. However, the early recordings failed to reflect the versatility of the bellbird, with its wide variety of liquid notes and artistically placed clicks and bell-like sounds. It's not surprising that Maori mythology describes korimako, the bellbird, as the messenger of Tane, sent to herald the coming of the sun.
Community or chaos? We can construct and nurture community or fall into chaos. Over the next hour, Marvin Hubbard hosts conversations toward creating a fairer, more equal society.
Community or Chaos is made possible with the support of Quakers Aotearoa. You'll find them online at quaker.org.nz.
Good morning, friends. Today we have Simon Sheffield, a professor of law at Auckland University, and we're going to be talking about risk and data breaches or cyber security. Welcome to Community or Chaos, Simon.
Thank you for having me.
So what was your first reaction when you heard about Manage My Health data breach?
Yeah, often in these situations, it's difficult to know exactly what has gone on. And so we're being fed information a little by little. We know that, for instance, that there has been threats of a ransom in respect of information. We also knew that some client data had been taken. It's now revealed, I believe, 127,000 people have been affected. So often the first thing with these cyber attacks is to find out exactly what's happening, and often that is the organisation, Manage My Health, have to follow their processes, and that's where their priorities lie in shoring up security and so forth. So my initial thought was that these cyber attacks are getting more and more frequent. The hackers are getting more and more sophisticated, and we're seeing New Zealand be at the weekend of the system, i.e., the US and the British systems and the European systems are much better, and so those hackers are turning to other places like New Zealand in order to hack the data.
So we're a tempting target because our security isn't as good as some other countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking...
I do think that New Zealand has relied a lot in the past on the fact that we're a little island in the Pacific, and therefore those world issues don't affect us in the same way that it affects other countries.
That doesn't work.
The other countries have more money, and therefore they're sort of more worth going after. But of course, that's all a deflection, isn't it? It doesn't actually solve the security issues. It just explains why New Zealand has lax systems.
But actually, distance isn't a very good protection against cybersecurity.
Correct. That's exactly the point. The world is coming to New Zealand.
I was thinking about I've been a member of Manage My Health through my health care. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was just thought of talking with a friend of mine, it isn't only your health that's on there. It's your age, your address, everything about you.
Your personal information, yeah. And some of that personal information is highly sensitive.
And they can do
so,
things with it that you wouldn't care for.
yeah, so, there's the potential for blackmail and the like.
How about
Certainly in respect of some of that health information.
How about stealing your identity?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Those are all real risks with cyber attacks and data breaches.
One of the first things I heard about managing your health was they came apparently. Well, first, what's the scale of this attack compared to other cyber attacks New Zealand has faced and also other countries?
I can't speak to other countries. What I can say is there is increasing cyber attacks that are taking place against businesses and government organisations, and we've seen that in New Zealand. And some of that is people, having poor security protocols. Is one of those aspects, but there are many others. So we've seen, for instance, data breaches in respect of the Earthquake Commission. Cameron Slater had famously had they were able to access his systems. The Commerce Commission has faced a data breach. The Waikato District Health Board has faced a data breach. Mercury IT, which provides the IT systems for Te Whatu Ora, faced a data breach in 2022. There's the Australasian Automotive Business Solutions Limited. In 2024, we've had Neighbourly this year, and most recently, we've had Langley Twig, which is a law firm in Napier, being attacked. So this is becoming an increasingly big concern for New Zealand. So yes, the Manage My Health cyber security breach is large. Is it the largest? Well, it's all relative. When you're comparing, say, New Zealand with the likes of Australia, or the US or the UK, they obviously have much larger numbers. So certainly the amount of GP practices that were using this and indicate that it's a widespread problem across New Zealand.
The CEO of Manage My Health admitted that the attackers got through the front door using a valid password. What does that mean? They were able to get hold of a member's password and use that?
Yeah, so as I understand it, the hackers have the ability through their systems to basically refresh the pages with new passwords, right? And so they just they just hack the password. What I mean is that they enter thousands of passwords, and they make it. They can make the computer do it, and that way they're able to get into the system.
So that if you launch a very large number of passwords, likely that one of them will open the door.
Yeah, exactly. It's like getting a key cutter to your home to make a key for you, right? They make the key, they open the door. Yeah, and that's the computer system is designed to do that.
How can you prevent that?
So the major way, as I understand it, is two-factor identification. So often that's those annoying apps on your phone where you've got to you enter your password, but then you've got to enter into your two-factor identification. Your two-factor identification is usually a password that comes to your phone, and you enter that one, and it's time limited usually. And then once those two devices are recognized, then you're able to use that device to go into that website or whatever portal more regularly.
It strikes me that this is all getting pretty complicated, particularly for people my age and people that aren't necessarily computer au fait. How are you? I guess that's one of the questions we have to face. Oh, one of the questions we're not facing is that actually with passwords and data breaches and cyber warfare, it needs to get more complicated to protect it, but the more complicated it gets, the less friendly it is to use if you're...
Exactly. I am not an IT expert, and I'm just talking at a generic level. But these hackers are very sophisticated. But we are, there's implementations of various systems, such as, I don't know whether you've got an iPhone or an Android, you've got, of course, got Face ID now. Some things have fingerprint ID, which make things a little bit easier. But even there, that's biometric information that's being used in that, and that creates its own set of challenges in this space.
Did Manage My Health get any warning? I've understand.
So there's two judgments that have been released in the Manage My Health matter. And the first judgment is an application for a without notice injunction, restraining unknown persons from publishing or distributing information from the cyber attack. Now, in that document, it records that they were notified on the 30th of December from a third party who was claiming to have accessed that data, and then the following day, they received 3 anonymous emails from the hackers wanting their $60,000 USD in Bitcoin. So they would have had, by the way in which the judgment is written, that indicates to me that they had probably less than 24 hours. On the 31st of December, so everyone's going to be on holiday, right? So you got New Year's Eve, and you're being told there's a cyber attack. So my point is that yes, they had some time, but they didn't have a very much. Once the hackers are in and they've got the information, there's a process to deal with. A legal process to deal with restraining the use of that information. But at that early stage, I don't think anything could have been done that was done differently, i.e. the main issue is the design of the system to begin with, i.e. it should never have been vulnerable to these security problems in the first place. And in fact, as I understand it from the material, that they were warned about 6 months earlier about the vulnerabilities of their system. And in fact, the Privacy Commissioner was involved at that stage, and they made some tweaks to the system, but then subsequently, obviously subject to this cyber attack.
So there was actually big questions about the security for Manage My Health well before the cyber attack.
Yes. I think one person on TV1 or on the TV described it as that KFC had better security systems than Manage My Health.
What did the privacy commissioner have to say 6 months before? Or some...
Sorry, I don't have those details in front of me. Let me just... So the Deputy Privacy Commissioner, Liz McPherson, confirmed that that Manage My Health had notified them and had investigated the breaches, and that the Commissioner had advised extending additional protections to all accounts. So I don't know whether that was implemented or not, but just to round out that issue, there is the Privacy Commissioner, since being notified of this breach, is conducting an inquiry into what happened, why it happened, and what lessons to learn from it.
Well, 6 months ago,
all of that information will come out in due course.
6 months ago, what could they have done to shore up their system?
Yeah, again, I'm not an IT expert, but as I understand it, the two-factor identification could have prevented this attack.
In other words, if you made it harder to prove your ID before going in?
Correct. But that's the balance that you have already described, which is that it will be very difficult for people unfamiliar with that system, especially we're talking about those people that need the Manage My Health services. So those people will often be vulnerable, they'll often be old. That comes with the associated challenges. And getting that system, if you're implementing a two-factor system, then you'd have to get those people up and using that system.
Which would take time and money, probably.
Exactly. And so it was easier, it seems, to sweep it under the carpet, although admittedly, that's why we've got the Privacy Commissioner is conducting an inquiry to find all these things out. We simply, well, I don't personally know all the decision making within Manage My Health.
Many people I know are quite clear about the need for passwords and secure passwords, but very few people I know enjoy passwords or having to change your password or.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
So, heads I lose, tails I lose. I mean,
yeah, it is.
They needed to do it, but it would have been painful. But not as painful as being hacked.
Yeah. So you've got the money and resources that will go into creating a better system, which, to be fair to Manage My Health, I believe and I understand that the current system had immediately implemented that two-factor identification system. And so the question is, why didn't they do that earlier? If it was so easy to do afterwards, why wasn't it done before?
That's a very good question.
As I say, these issues will all be teased out
by the Privacy Commissioner.
Yeah, Privacy Commissioner in their inquiry. Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
Would it have been expensive to do? Was it expensive to do what they've done now that they've?
I don't know the answer, but the fact that they've applied for a High Court injunction and they're subject to the Minister breathing down their neck would indicate that that is a lot more expensive than the two-factor identification system that could have been used.
How's cybersecurity throughout New Zealand? Because you mentioned government departments and other other entities that have suffered cyber attacks.
Can you just, I'm not quite understanding the question.
I mean, how? Well,
let me just, I'll outline some broad principles that might be useful for you. So, Principle 5 of the Privacy Act 2020 provides that all agencies must store and have storage and security of personal information. And so that is the way in which organisations are held to account. Now, the Privacy Act also sets out a variety of requirements in relation to a notification of a privacy breach. So if an agency is subject to a cyber attack, they are required by law to notify the Privacy Commissioner, and then once they've notified, inevitably the Privacy Commissioner will be involved in trying to resolve the issues. That will include notifying everyone whose personal information has been affected. So that regime serves as a useful way in which to deal with these cyber attacks. Alongside that notification system, there is the ability for organisations to file high court proceedings in respect of breaches of confidence and breaches of privacy in tort. And that is the basis upon which Manage My Health filed that without notice injunction in respect of that information that has been stolen. So that's a interim injunction, so it prevents them from using that information. It requires them to destroy that information. But of course, that's all very well. These are overseas sophisticated hackers. They're not going to pay any attention to a High Court judgment that prevents it. However, the people that use that information in New Zealand will also be restrained by that injunction. What I'm talking about is when the Waikato District Health Board case, Radio New Zealand got given all of the personal data. Well, I understand they had access to the personal data that was the subject of the cyber attack. Now, of course, that meant that Radio New Zealand couldn't obviously publish or republish that data, because there was an injunction in place in New Zealand in respect of that data.
In other words, it doesn't protect you from the hackers using the information. Partly because they're from overseas, but it may discourage New Zealand from taking advantage of the information in some way.
Yeah. And so even in New Zealand, we have seen cyber attacks. Oh, not cyber attacks. So the most notable example that I'm aware of is Barry Young, So Barry Young took a whole pile of vaccination records and then or sanitized them, so removed the personal information, and then sought to publicize that information in relation to the deaths associated with COVID-19 vaccinations. Now, that matter is currently proceeding through the courts, but a variety of orders have been made against Mr. Young in the Employment Relations Authority, but of course he is now currently being prosecuted under Section 249 of the Crimes Act for misuse of a computer system. So if the hacker is in New Zealand, then of course there's the ability to use the criminal law in respect of them. But often these hackers aren't based here, and so that has the resulting problems associated with that. So those are the things that Manage My Health have done in the immediate aftermath of the cyber attack. Now, all of that's all very well, but it's a bit like a sieve, right? So you're just not going to stop the leak. You may protect it from, getting being more widely publicised, i.e., it being available in New Zealand, but of course, in terms of it being lawful, but more problematically is that these hackers are based overseas.
Can cyber hackers, can they disguise where they're coming from?
Yes. So in the Manage My Health judgment, it refers to the rotating IP address usage. Yeah, so what they'll do is they rotate where they get a VPN or something along those lines, and they'll change their IP address frequently, so you just simply don't know where they are.
Do we have enough all-over regulation? Do we have on cybersecurity? And does the Privacy Commission have enough staff and equipment for what they need?
Yeah, I do wonder about those things. The fact that Manage My Health, in light of the fact that they were subject to a complaint to the Privacy Commissioner 6 months prior, indicates to me that there's insufficient enforcement. So the point is we wait till the event and then start to do something, but we're not prepared to prepare for it. And it may have been more cost effective. I don't know what the amounts we're talking about, but I can only imagine that the cost to Manage My Health since the cyber attack is a lot worse than the cost of implementing these systems. The systems that were needed to prevent the hackers in the first place.
Does the present government take an attitude using light-handed regulation? In other words, letting the business or corporation or department regulate themselves?
Therein lies the problem, right? So you've got 127,000 people that have been affected. So if you don't regulate, which is what the current government's position is, then each of those 127,000 people need to make individual claims against Manage My Health for a breach of IPP 5, so Information Principle 5. you can see the problem with that, right? Um, it's just unless you've got a class action um, in respect of this, those organisations won't be held to account, and it will be forgotten about. Admittedly, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner is now doing an inquiry, but we're going to wait months for that to happen, um, and we don't know the outcome. What we do know is the existing case law on IPP5, and there are examples of letters being sent to the wrong address, and I'll give you an example of a classic um, uh, situation. It's not a cyber security, but it gives you an idea of the issues at play. So, a power company mistakenly shared the address of a complainant with their partner, who had a history of violent threats and harassment against them. And so they expressly asked the power company to send the bills to the new address. They didn't do that. They mistakenly sent the bill to his new physical address. The company mistakenly sent a bill containing his new physical address to his old um, email address, and his ex-partner then began to harass that person. So you can see how, and that in that particular case, the complaint was eventually settled through mediation, and the company paid a total of $24,000. And if you apply that to Manage My Health, you can think of the sort of information that they would have at their disposal.
Yes, it's not just your health, it's your age, it's your sexuality, it's your address, it's your phone numbers, it's you may even be your computer address. That's the kind of things that
you're going to have psychiatric diagnoses, sexual health information, whether there's been reporting of family violence, ultimately intimate confessions or explanations that people give to their doctors. And while we believe that information is sacrosanct, right, this shows the vulnerabilities in that system. So my point is that if you don't have regulation, then what happens is you need to enforce that against those private organisations. And without that enforcement, then you've got a real problem. That's why we, have a police force. That's why we have those things that are funded by the state to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen.
So really protecting you from cyber theft, which actually is, it's like protecting you from having your house broken into and your material stolen, isn't it?
Oh, that's right. So even if we look at, say, the Commerce Commission cyber incident, it wasn't a cyber, it was a data breach. They literally someone went into the home of the contractor and stole the information. So physically just picked up the computer. So, it's a physical burglary, but actually what we're worried about is the use of that information after that information has been stolen.
But I think
now,
if you steal information from a website, it's like going to somebody's house and stealing their material property.
I agree. But my essential point is it can encompass both.
Yeah. What would you like to see happen about general cybersecurity in New Zealand? What's the government's responsibility, in your opinion?
I mean,
How much?
even if they're not going to undertake regulation, then the least they can do is provide audits. So, what I mean by an audit is an independent certifier system that basically says, well, that system has the security safeguards in respect of that information. And those audit, it's much like a police going undercover, right? You stress test it. And so that ensures that those systems aren't vulnerable. We shouldn't be in a situation where that information is that vulnerable. But of course, these hackers are getting increasingly sophisticated, and our 1990s systems, aren't keeping up to date because we can't afford to update them. Well, at least that will be one of the reasons why. And cybersecurity is expensive.
It's like everything else.
It boggles the mind.
And how much of this is the government's responsibility and how much is the corporate responsibility?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. I do think both have a role to play. I think ultimately, if we don't enforce the law, then those organisations won't learn to improve their cybersecurity. On the other hand, the government has a role here to play in ensuring that those both the government departments and those businesses do protect that information.
People often complain about too much regulation, but the truth is that regulations are one of the things that make things work or not work. Isn't that true? Like, if you'd had proper regulation, why the Pike River mine disaster probably wouldn't have happened, looking back.
I think we're at it with the current government at the moment, which view is that regulation is bad and that we try to get rid of as much regulation as possible. The problem with that is it creates a void. It creates a void because those 127,000 people that have had their data compromised now need to, in order to enforce their rights, go through a complex system in order to enforce those rights. But in the government, because it's saying, well, not my problem, because we're not providing that regulation, has to do an inquiry through the Privacy Commissioner to try to fill gaps. And I don't think either either regulate or don't regulate is necessarily the solution. I think there's a happy balance to be made between the two to ensure that this sort of activity doesn't happen again. That admittedly it will. That's the sad reality. Given the amount of case law that's developed in the cybersecurity breach space, it's only a matter of time before there's another cybersecurity incident. And it's really about risk management, right? And if those security can be limited or minimized so that the hackers never get access to all of the information or whatever, then those layers of security will be working.
Isn't it a real question about our attitude toward risk and security? Does the government have an obligation to govern for the common good?
Oh, these are all very philosophical questions.
Yeah, but it matters. If you decide that my only job is to make sure that we're all on the same table.
Yeah.
And
I do think we live in a democracy, and people have different opinions on how to manage these situations. My view is that what is concern is those 127 individuals that have been affected.
the trouble is, the average person isn't aware of the results of light-handed regulation or the problems that can happen.
Well, they usually find out when it's too late.
That's what I mean. So you have to have a Pike River, or you have to have a big data breach before people ask questions.
Absolutely.
And obviously, if the government doesn't ask the questions after things like this happen, and they really haven't even after Pike River, not the present government, why you're going to redo history. If you don't learn from history, you repeat it.
I do think sometimes that's the intention. That's a cynical view, isn't it? Yeah.
But is it important that the citizens of New Zealand are aware of the risks and try to influence their government? It's our government. We can't, it's not somebody else's government.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of being in a democracy, right? Yeah.
But the problem is that often we don't think about something like this until we're in the midst.
Yeah.
But the government's actually, for instance, said that they're not going to be responsible for what happens to people's property and lives because of climate change, sea level rise.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that the government has a role to play. And the question is the extent to that role, right? Some people would want a more strong-handed approach that sees greater penalties imposed for data breaches. Other people would like a more educational approach. I don't necessarily see those things in opposition, but something...
It seems to me like education and regulation could work side by side. In fact,
absolutely.
The regulation wouldn't work unless you had education.
Correct. Well, I think it can come off without education. Regulation comes off as a very blunt instrument.
But if you don't know what the regulations are saying.
Correct. Yeah. So it's like what I mean is you're getting your parking ticket and you didn't realise that you shouldn't have parked there, right? It's you're finding out after the fact. But then again, once you've parked there, you won't park there again because you've got a ticket. So I think it's what I would call lazy regulation. If you don't provide education around it, you just get a whole pile of annoyed people.
Do you think that private-public partnership is going to make this more complicated?
I think we're already there. I think that I say we're already there because if you think of the mass tech giants, they have an awful lot of information about everybody. So the government's not the only one with a lot of information about us. So if those organisations already have a lot of information about us, I don't think the transition from public to a private system is going to necessarily change that. I do think there needs to be better enforcement mechanisms.
Do you think it will be an issue?
Whatever form they take. Do
you think this is going to be a political issue?
No, I don't think that it's a political issue, mainly because there's bigger fish to fry.
I guess
we sort of have this toleration in this country of data breaches. Yeah. We've sort of got to the point where we accept that there will be a data breach because our systems are underfunded or fully equipped.
Would it be cheaper in the long run to have a more secure system, even though it would cost more to start with? Or
I don't think it is going to cost more. That's my major concern. If Manage My Health can implement the system immediately to have two-factor identification, you've got to weigh that cost off against the cost of the High Court injunction, dealing with the minister, dealing with the Privacy Commissioner. Those lawyers must be making a fortune in relation to this privacy breach. So I think you're not taking into account, not you personally, that organisations need to take measures to have secure data, and they're often waiting for a breach. But a good organisation should be able to foresee the real risk that poses to their organisation and mitigate accordingly.
This data breach, this particular one, be causing heartaches to both not only the company but doctors that use the system and patients.
Well, patients aren't going to tell their doctors what's going on because there might be a data breach. I mean, that's got to be a concern from a public health perspective. I'm not going to tell you I've got COVID or whatever disease, because that might be subject to a cybersecurity leak.
That's something you wouldn't think about until something like this happened.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I'm on this system myself, and I never considered the security issue.
Yeah, well, that's part of it, right? But the onus is really the onus.
I mean, you assume anything like this will be secure. Well, that's the typical assumption, anyway.
Yeah.
What kind of regulations would you suggest?
If I was doing
if you were the government,
I would suggest that the Privacy Commissioner has a proactive investigatory obligation in respect of, say, particular types of data, such as health data. That means stress testing them. So you get in your hackers, your good hackers, and they try to infiltrate the system, much like an undercover cop does.
If this had happened to Manage My Health, obviously you'd have had clear evidence it wasn't working, because it wasn't such a. I mean, apparently from what we've been talking about and heard, that getting into the system wasn't that hard.
I'll give you an example of the sort of issues that are facing. So in a recent decision of the Privacy Commissioner, a finance company received a phone call from a person claiming to be an existing customer. The customer centre staff were misled, and the impersonator obtained personal information about that person and their access to their account. Now, the customer complained to the Privacy Commissioner about the fact that they had been given this personal information to this impersonator. But the Privacy Commissioner, in that said, there was a requirement on the company to notify of that privacy breach to the Privacy Commissioner, and they'd failed to do so. And I think that's really important, that when these issues arise, that the Privacy Commissioner is contacted, or something like that. If you don't trust the Privacy Commissioner, then of course you've got your own legal advice. But my suggestion is that there's greater engagement with the Privacy Commissioner in these cases.
Are you
by organisations.
are you required to make these engagements to actually contact them?
Yes. Yeah. So where there's been a privacy breach, an organisation is required to notify the Privacy Commissioner, and that has happened in all the cases that we've discussed so far. So that's why the Privacy Commissioner is now, of course, undertaking an inquiry.
Can you be fined if you fail to?
Yes. Yeah. But
Was this automatically?
I don't think I will have to look up the section because I don't remember it off the top of my head. But the fines aren't a great deal. Let me just, I can. I'm literally looking it up for you. How about that?
Okay, great.
So Section 114 of the Privacy Act 2020. And then so an agency that without reasonable excuse fails to notify the Commissioner of a notable privacy breach commits an offence and is liable to conviction to a fine not exceeding $10,000.
That's very cheap, actually.
Totally
Depending on the size of the company. And
correct.
I mean, it's like a parking ticket.
It is like a parking ticket. And the worst thing about this is that it's after there's been a breach. So it's not even a parking ticket that you failed an audit. It's a parking ticket after the information has been leaked.
I mean, you know what people do with parking tickets? They'll often risk a parking ticket because the parking ticket's relatively cheap compared to parking garage or getting another form of transport.
Yeah. And for every, one that, one that they get, they've parked illegally 10 times.
Isn't this all really connected to the entire idea of that light-handed regulation or no regulation is better and should be the policy of our government?
I mean, I do think that the Privacy Act is quite extensive already. And it's just a matter of enforcing it and having the ability to do that. And I'm not sure that certainly the Privacy Commissioner will tell you that they don't have the tools compared to their overseas counterparts to deal with these issues.
And also,
and
apparently,
and so forth.
If the heaviest fine is $10,000, that's not a great encouragement to very large firms, banks, and other large firms to comply. Yeah. I mean, there are probably plenty of good reasons why you should comply, even for your own good. But
so obviously, so that would be an offence to fail to notify, but of course you're still liable in respect of the breaches themselves. So you'd still breach the Privacy Act principles in relation to the disclosure of that information. So it's not an either or, it's an addition to.
Should the political parties be discussing risk management? Before the
this is awfully
election.
Optimistic. I honestly think it's at the bottom of the list.
But it's quite, risk management is very important.
Absolutely.
And
I agree with you.
We've had people take really good studies about risk management, particularly in relationship to sea level rise, and had governments, this particular government, totally ignore the recommendations.
Yeah.
And that means that, thousands of people will be at risk, more risk than necessary because of climate change. than if the government took the recommendations seriously instead of just rewriting them.
Yeah. There's a sort of approach where we wait until it's too late. But the challenge is that you've got to have deep pockets if you're going to wait until it's too late. And the way in which things are currently is that we, often put those companies into liquidation or whatever, and so there's no one to sue. I wouldn't be surprised if Manage My Health goes under.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for talking about this and this particular case and how its implications for risk management generally and cybersecurity generally. Thanks a lot for coming on, Simon. It's been great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.